At 31, I thought I had a good life. Not grand, not glamorous, just good. An apartment that didn't leak, a job that paid on time, groceries with labels I could read. But in my family, being good wasn't enough to be noticed. I was the one who remembered birthdays, paid the copays when mom's insurance lapsed, transferred gas money into dad's account when the heat cut off in January. Not once did anyone say thank you, because I wasn't the favorite. That was Zeke, who always meant well. Zeke, who dropped out of college twice. Zeke, who called himself a creator and lived in the basement making visual poetry on borrowed equipment. I was the spreadsheet. He was the story. My name is Martha Wells, and I was raised to carry what everyone else dropped. I started working at 15, cashiering at the dollar store down the road. The manager once asked if I was saving up for a car. I told him I was saving up for groceries. Back then, Dad lost his job and said it wasn't my problem. But the next morning, I found Mom crying in the kitchen, holding an overdue electric bill. So I used my paycheck. It became a rhythm. Crisis. Martha. Quiet. Repeat. Even as an adult, I told myself it was normal. It was just how families worked. Then, last week, I got a notice from the bank, addressed to Martha Wells, primary borrower. I hadn't signed a mortgage. I hadn't bought a house. But I was being told I owed one. And just like that, everything I thought I understood about love, duty, and family began to come undone. The letter didn't come with a warning. Just a flat envelope with my name typed in capital letters. Inside, a past due mortgage statement, stamped in red, final notice before foreclosure. I thought it was a scam, until I read the fine print. The loan was real. The address was my parents', and the primary borrower was me. I sat at the edge of my bed, holding the paper like it might catch fire. My fingers trembled. Not from the debt. From the betrayal. Didn't remember signing anything. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing how easily I'd believe they might do it. A voicemail from my mother came in an hour later. Not frantic, not apologetic, just matter of fact. We were going to tell you. It's only in your name on paper. You know we'd never let it affect you. That line hit me harder than any bill ever could. Only in your name on paper. Like I was just usable real estate. Not a person. Not a daughter. Just a line of credit. Then came Zeke. He messaged me with a link to a Support Our Home fundraiser. Hey, if you could just repost this, Mom said it'll really help visibility. No apology, no explanation. Just a request to keep playing. My role. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling and replayed a thought I couldn't unthink. If they used my name without asking how much more have I given them without realizing it? I spent the next day doing what I'd always done, rationalizing. Maybe it was a clerical error. Maybe they needed a cosigner and forgot to ask in the rush. Maybe Mom didn't know Dad used my name. Maybe, that word, maybe, has carried more weight in my life than love ever has. I opened my laptop and logged into the loan portal listed on the letter. Security questions? All answers were mine. My birthday. My first pet. The account wasn't in my name by accident. I called the loan office, asked for clarification. The woman on the line said, "You're listed as the primary borrower. The others are secondary and deferred. That means the credit responsibility starts with you. Deferred. Like my dreams. Like my life." She paused. "Are you not living at that property?" I laughed. A sharp, brittle sound that didn't feel like mine. "No," I said. "I'm the one who left so they could keep the couch." I hung up. That night, Mom called. Again. Her tone was soft now. Not icy. Sweet. Practiced. "Honey, you know we'd never hurt you. It's just you always know how to handle these things. You're the responsible one. As if responsibility was love. As if my usefulness was proof of belonging. I didn't argue. I just sat there, listening. To the gentle guilt, the motherly manipulation, the reminder that I was only ever valuable when I was giving something. And when the call ended, I stared at the black screen and whispered to no one. Maybe it's not a misunderstanding. Maybe this is who they've always been. I hadn't touched the quilt in years. It sat folded in the cedar chest at the foot of my bed, the one thing I kept after Grandma passed. Hand-stitched squares in faded reds and pale blues, sewn by fingers that held every memory tighter than most people ever held me. That night, after the third call from Mom, I couldn't sleep, so I opened the chest, the scent of old cotton, and lavender hit me like time travel. I lifted the quilt, and something fluttered loose beneath it, a letter, yellowed at the corners, addressed in Grandma's cursive, to me. Dear Martha, if you're reading this, you've probably given more than you should. It's how they raised you, not to be seen, but to fix things quietly. But baby, the world doesn't change just because you carry it better. Sometimes you have to put it down. Let it fall. Let them see what it's like without you holding it up. I read it twice. Then again. Her words weren't bitter, just tired. Like she'd lived this cycle herself. And maybe she had. Maybe that's why she never asked for much. She just left a note, folded beneath fabric meant to keep me warm when the house got cold. I sat there on the edge of the bed, quilt on my lap, letter in hand. For the first time in years, I felt like someone truly saw me. Not as a resource, not as a fallback, just me. Maybe love isn't always loud. Maybe it's what tells you to walk, not stay. I didn't tell them I was coming. No dramatic announcement, no warning shot. Just a quiet drive back to the house I used to call home. A place where my presence had always been felt more in utility bills than in hugs. The front yard hadn't changed. Plastic flamingos still leaning sideways. The porch light flickered like always. Tired, old, but refusing to burn out. I had a folder in my bag, labeled, color-coded, printouts of every transfer I'd ever made, dates, amounts, confirmation. Numbers. No one greeted me at the door. Inside, Mom was in the kitchen stirring something in a pot. She looked up startled, but not surprised. Martha, you should have called. I didn't answer, just sat down at the dining table, took out the folder, laid the papers flat like a final hand in a losing game. These are all the payments. The money you said was going to the mortgage. Here's what the bank says. It hasn't been paid in months. Dad walked in from the hallway, holding his lower back like always, the same way he used to after yelling, as if his anger pulled muscles. Why are you digging like this? He asked. You know we're not trying to hurt you. I looked, at both of them, and for once I didn't raise my voice, didn't flinch, didn't beg to be believed. This isn't about hurt. This is about honesty. And what happens when it runs out? Maybe silence was the only thing keeping the illusion alive. They didn't say much after that. No shouting, no tears, just the clatter of a wooden spoon dropped into a sink and the hum of something boiling over. Dad sat down across from me like he wanted to argue, but didn't have the words. And Mom, she just stirred the air like she was trying to undo something already done. We didn't think it would get this far, she said finally. We were trying to keep the family together. It took everything in me not to laugh. Keep the family together? By lying to the one person keeping the lights on? I said nothing, not because I didn't have thoughts, but because for the first time, my silence felt louder than their excuses. I stood up, picked up the folder, tucked it back into my bag. Their eyes followed me, not with guilt, but confusion, as if they still didn't understand why I was walking away from the arrangement they built on my back. Zeke appeared in the hallway, headphones around his neck, eyes half-lidded. You're blowing this out of proportion, he muttered. It's not like we used the money for vacations. I turned toward him, no anger, just exhaustion. That's right. You used it for comfort. Yours. He scoffed. Mom whispered, You're being cold, Martha. I paused at the door. Cold is what happens when the fire burns too long and no one checks if you're okay. Maybe walking away wasn't the betrayal. Maybe staying silent was. I didn't go back to work the next morning. I stayed home, wrapped in the same quilt Grandma left me, the letter still tucked beneath the edge. My hands were cold, but my mind was sharper than ever. I gathered the documents again, this time with intention. Bank statements, pay stubs, screenshots, a printed transcript of the call with the loan officer, every transfer I'd made, every promise they broke. I packed it neatly in an envelope and wrote 2 names on the front, Victor and Darla Wells. No mom, no dad, just the names of 2 adults who had made a choice. I didn't call, didn't warn. I sent the envelope through registered mail. Signature required. Because this time, they'd have to acknowledge what I gave them, in writing. Then I logged into my accounts. I deleted every auto payment, unlinked every connection. For the first time since I was 16, I made my financial life mine again. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because the grief had calcified into clarity. Later that night, a text came in from Zeke. Thanks for the drama. Now we're all sinking. I stared at the message. No apology, no ownership, just blame, wrapped. In sarcasm, I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a new spreadsheet, titled it, What I Keep. And on the first row, I typed one word, peace. Maybe revenge isn't always noise. Maybe it's the silence after you've said nothing and done everything. I wasn't invited. Of course I wasn't. It was Zeke who posted about it first, a farewell dinner before the house went into foreclosure. Mom had even ordered a cake. Thank you for the memories. The caption read like a eulogy for a house. But not a single line mentioned who kept it standing all those years. I didn't go to shame them. I went because I needed to look them in. The eyes one last time. I walked in just as Dad was lighting the candles on the table. Everyone turned. Forks paused. Mom's smile faltered. Zeke blinked. Martha, Mom said slowly. This is unexpected. I held up a manila folder. Not raised, not dramatic. Just placed it on the table next to the mashed potatoes. Bank cleared the balance this morning. Loan is paid, mortgage settled, the house won't be taken, but I won't be paying for anything else. Silence. Then Dad cleared his throat. We didn't ask you to do that. You didn't have to, I said. You just expected it. Zeke scoffed under his breath. Why now? To make us feel guilty? I shook my head. No, just to make it official. That this house was never saved by love, only by someone you forgot to love back. I turned and walked out. No one followed, no one said thank you, no one stopped me, and I didn't slam the door. Maybe closure isn't a scene. Maybe it's the sound of your own footsteps, walking away without regret. The next morning, I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder what they were saying. I didn't rehearse comebacks or imagine closure, because closure had already happened when no one got up from that dinner table. I sat in my apartment with a cup of black tea, letting the warmth settle between my palms. The silence felt heavier than usual, but not unkind, like a room finally emptied of expectations. Later that afternoon, a text buzzed through, from Zeke. So now what? You just vanish? I didn't answer. A voicemail came an hour later. Mom's voice, strained. Not quite angry, not quite sad, just hollow. We were trying our best. You could have handled it better. We're family. And families don't give up on each other. I almost smiled. They hadn't noticed. They gave up on me years ago. They just called it love because I kept showing up. That night, I opened my old savings ledger, the one I used before everything blurred. The balance was low, but it was mine again. The quiet in the room wasn't loneliness. It was honesty. For once, there was no one else's debt hiding in my fridge, no one's prescription refill sitting in my inbox, just me, and stillness. Maybe the loudest thing I ever did was leave without raising my voice. I didn't buy new furniture. I didn't celebrate. I just went home, my real home. A one-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor with no elevator and a door that sticks if you don't pull it just right. But it was mine. Every corner, every chipped tile, every creaky floorboard belonged to me. The fridge didn't hold someone else's supplements. The hallway didn't echo with someone else's cough. And when I lay in bed, I wasn't waiting for a late-night call asking for help. I was just resting, not recovering, not bracing, just resting. I woke up the next morning and realized it was the first time in a decade I didn't feel behind on something. I made oatmeal, watered the 2 plants I managed to keep alive, sat by the window and watched the light change colors on the floor. There were no crises, no lists, no guilt, and the silence. It didn't hurt anymore. It felt earned. There's an ache that comes from being needed for all the wrong reasons, but there's also a peace that comes when you finally stop volunteering to carry what no one else wants to lift. Zeke didn't message again. Mom didn't call. Dad didn't send another guilt-wrapped reminder. Maybe they were hoping I'd feel lonely. Maybe they thought I'd miss the noise. But I didn't. I missed being seen. And now I had that. Even if the only person seeing me was me. Maybe you don't need a full house to feel full. Maybe an empty room with your name on the lease is enough. The mail came on a Thursday. Nothing dramatic, just a brown envelope with my name typed neatly across the front. Inside was the final confirmation from the bank. My name had been removed from the house. No more liability, no more hidden debt, no more pretending. I stared at the letter for a long time. Not because I didn't believe it, but because it was the first official proof that I had finally unhooked myself from a history that never fully claimed me. They said I was temporary, said I was just the in-between, the filler, the reliable one until Zeke figured things out, until Dad got another contract, until Mom could catch her breath. But temporary doesn't hold a house together for 8 years. Temporary doesn't skip meals to make sure the power stays on. Temporary doesn't remember birthdays, refill prescriptions, or sit in waiting rooms until everyone else goes home. They called me the strong one, but only when it suited them. When I carried, when I paid, when I stayed quiet. Now I wasn't. Temporary. I was permanent. In my own space. In my own name. I passed by the mirror that night and saw something in my reflection I hadn't seen in years. Steadiness. Not pride, not triumph, just steadiness. The kind that comes when you finally stop negotiating your worth. I used to think strength was proving I belonged. But now I know, real strength is leaving when you're no longer respected, even if they call it betrayal. Maybe I was never the placeholder. Maybe I was the foundation, and they just never bothered to see it. 3 months later, I ran into Mrs. Heller, our old neighbor. She was walking her dog past the library when she saw me sitting on the bench. We talked for a while, about the weather, about her garden, about everything except them. Then she paused and said, "Your mother told everyone. You moved away out of spite, that you turned your back when they needed you most." I didn't flinch. I just nodded. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to correct the story. Let them have it. Let them keep their version. Because the truth wasn't something I needed to shout anymore. I was already living in it. I said goodbye to Mrs. Heller and walked home. Not to a mansion, not to a grand life. Just a quiet place with my name on the lease and no one else's demands on the walls. The mailbox had no threats. The phone didn't buzz at midnight. I made dinner for one, watered my plants, read a book without checking the clock. And when I turned off the light that night, I didn't cry. I didn't second guess. I just breathed. There's a kind of peace that only comes when you stop waiting for an apology. When you realize you don't need them to see you, as long as you finally see yourself. And if they ever tell the story of how I left, I hope they remember this much. I didn't leave in anger. I left in truth, because maybe the quietest goodbye is also the most honest one.